discuss some important context here that has to do with Canadian actors being stuck in a labor dispute for the last 2 years between the Alliance of Canadian Cinema, Television, and Radio Artists and Canadian ad agencies. So these ad agencies have been hiring non-union actors over union actors, and it's been a very contentious labor dispute. And John Krasinski recently appeared in an ad, in a Rogers ad, and that is an ad that is produced by Publicis, which is one of the companies, one of the ad companies that's union busting. All right, so here's his stupid fucking ad that he's in.
Dance as if no one's watching.
While American John Krasinski shows off his moves in this Rogers ad, actors in Canada who appear in commercials
First of all, the ad is embarrassing, okay? The ad is embarrassing. Let alone him being a scab for doing this. The ad is so cringe. White People DD, thank you for the gifted sub to Camilla Harris.
calling him out.
We do our thing, so you can do yours.
The irony of watching this commercial and it being almost like a metaphor for what's happening right now is that he's like dancing on our like rights and our livelihood.
ACTRA, the Canadian Actors Union, and the Institute of Canadian Agencies, or ICA, which represents a group of ad agencies, have been in a labor dispute.
Also, just a reminder that John Krasinski's net worth is like $80 million. So fuck him.
For about 2.5 years now. After talks to renegotiate a deal that's been in place since the 1960s broke down, Canadian unionized commercial actors say they're getting far fewer opportunities. The union says it's locked out, but the ICA says it's the union that's telling its members not to take work from these agencies.
Those of us who had careers, it's fallen off a cliff. Like, there just isn't enough work.
Kate Ziegler, once the voice for Ontario Lottery.
This is why a lot of Canadian actors try to get work visas so they can work in the U.S. because there is such little opportunity available for Canadian actors. And then usually what will happen for, like in television and film, for the big roles, they'll hire American actors or they'll hire like big Canadian actors who are, you know, who live in America. They don't live in Canada. And even though like the union contract stipulates that union film and television projects have to hire a certain number of Canadian actors, they're usually relegated to like the small background roles.
And Gaming and Rogers says casting calls have dwindled.
So they hire American actors and then they shoot in Canada because they get so many tax breaks. Just like so many slaps in the face.
When actors and writers were on strike in the U.S. last year, she says Canadian actors backed them up. The American Actors Union maintains it's supporting ACTRA in this fight too. But Ziegler says she's not seeing enough support.
Get that messaging out and potentially get to somebody like John Krasinski to say, like, please don't do this ad.
Neither Rogers, John Krasinski, or Publicis, the agency behind the ad, responded to requests for comment. Even if there's
Also, just gotta say, I don't remember seeing John Krasinski out on the picket lines. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do not remember seeing Krasinski on the SAG-AFTRA picket
swell
lines.
of support and some movement in this dispute, it may come too late for Ziegler. She's now preparing to sell her home.
It's like it's done.
While waiting for the Ontario Labour Relations Board to hear the dispute this fall. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. The Vice President of Canada's English Language Acting Union isn't happy seeing a Rogers ad featuring U.S. star John Krasinski letting loose to Taylor Swift in a boat on Lake Simcoe. Every time I see that commercial, it makes my skin crawl, said Keith Martin Gordey, who's also the president of the Union of British Columbia Performers. The agency that made that, Publicis, has locked us out. For more than 2 years, the labor dispute between ACTRA and a group of Canadian ad agencies has effectively prevented union actors from appearing in spots for many of the country's largest brands. Actor Jason Brydon said he moved to Toronto in 2012 because union commercial work had dried up in Vancouver. I just thought we should try Toronto and see if it's better there. And it was until this lockout. He says he went from auditioning 6 times a week to once every 6 months. I know that would be a lot different if I left my union, if I was a non-union performer. Brydon and some Canadian actors say the related loss of work has contributed to them having to sell their homes. That's one of the reasons that the ad, featuring a Hollywood star from an agency that isn't using Canadian union talent, has drawn criticism. Meanwhile, the group representing ad agencies in the dispute says agreeing to the deal the union wants would spell the end of union commercial work in Canada. So from the 1960s to 2022, ACTRA had a deal called the NCA, the National Commercial Agreement, with 2 groups, the Association of Canadian Advertisers, the ACA, which represent Canadian brands, and then the Institute of Canadian Agencies, which is the ICA, and that represents the creative agencies that produce ads on behalf of brands. So that's like what the video, that would be the contract of the video that John Krasinski did. The ACA has signed onto a series of extensions allowing advertisers a path to work with agencies using union talent. Meanwhile, the ICA and ACTRA have been unable to agree on an updated version of the deal, and talks broke down in April of 2022. ACTRA filed a bad faith bargaining claim with the Ontario Labour Relations Board against the ICA and ICA agencies. The union contends the NCA is a collective agreement, while the ICA says it's a contract that has expired, meaning that they can use non-union actors. The OLRB hearings are scheduled through December. Mediation between the 2 parties broke down in the fall of 2023, with the ICA stating on its website that the mediator determined the parties were too far apart to continue with the process. With union gigs, talks broke down, right? I know. Brydon says he had to sell his house in December and move to a different neighborhood with his kids. He's also considering a career change at age 52 and is thinking about going back to school to get a master's in psychology to become a counselor or psychotherapist. I'm just on the verge of maybe pulling the trigger on that, going back and getting into some student debt and reprogramming so I can bring my children to the finish line of the whelping. Nobody should have to do this. Like, whatever industry you're in, having to do a career change at 52, not because you want to, but because you are forced to, is wrong. Like, it's so wrong. He says he doesn't think his plan will change even if the union dispute is resolved. When you acquire things like a mortgage and children, you have to be making some good cake these days, especially in the cities where showbiz exists, like Vancouver and Toronto. Actor Paloma Nunez remembers how she felt when she first saw the Rogers ad. I was infuriated. Nunez referenced last year's actors' strike in the U.S. and said she'd like to see stars from south of the border insist that Canadian companies go back to using union talent as a precondition to coming here to work with them. All I'm asking and hoping is that they would show solidarity to us and say this isn't acceptable, and if you want us, you need to go back to union. Yeah, come on. Like, oh God. It is infuriating. It's so infuriating. It's so fucking infuriating that you have extremely wealthy stars like John Krasinski, who does not need this commercial. He does not. And continuing to be a scab while fucking over actual Canadian actors. I think there's a place for stars, people with a lot of notoriety, to make a statement, take a stand, do a thing to support the journeyman actors. She says she's also preparing to sell her home. I'll stay in the union, I'll stay and fight, but I can't hold this on my own anymore. In an email, a spokesperson for SAG-AFTRA expressed support for Canadian union actors. We wholeheartedly support our colleagues at ACTRA and their fight for fair protections for their members. Multiple emails to Krasinski's Publicis did not receive a response before publication. A representative for Rogers did not reply to an email seeking comment and requesting an interview. And here's the thing, okay? Let's say John Krasinski had no idea. All right? He was just doing his job, like had no idea. To right this wrong. Hold on a second. Hold on. TT. just so confusing. Hold on. Put this back on. I was so confused to open my door, and two employees who work for Twitch Originals were there, and they were holding these and this. And in my mind, I was like, is it someone's birthday? This is how stupid I am, you guys. I was like, is it someone's birthday? I'm like, no, it's only August 12th. I was like, I said, Will's birthday's the 14th of September and mine's the 29th. It's for the table. I'll show you. So I'm doing Cutie's show, a Twitch Original show on Wednesday. And I forgot that they said that they were dropping off gifts, which is so cute, so sweet. I got some delicious, you're invited to the table with Cutie Cinderella, nom nom. And I genuinely opened the door, was like, is this a birthday gift? Like, and then maybe an early birthday gift. Anyway, that was so funny, because I don't think I've ever been so confused. Oh, I bet these are going to be so yummy. Delicious. What is the table? The table is a show that Cutie's hosting, and there's like 4 or 5 episodes, and each episode revolves around food and conversation on food. So it's like the table where we're all sitting at a table and conversing. I recorded a video. Oh, fun. I forgot that was a part of it. Yeah. I hope you get featured as well. So anyway, it'll be super great. I'm doing episode 2 on Wednesday, and it'll just be, girlies chit-chatting, because that was her one stipulation. She's like, I want this to be an all-woman production. Like, I just want it to be the gals. Yeah, so it's a busy week and weekend this week. No, men. Sorry, guys. One episode already aired. I think it was Tina Kitten, Fusli Valkyrie, if maybe Myung, maybe. I think it might have been the Roomies. Yeah. So this week it is Cinna, me, Mari, and Daff. Yeah, Cinna, me, Mari, and Daff. There's 4 on each episode. I was supposed to do September 4th, which is the episode that Sam is doing, but I'm going to be gone because I'm traveling to Armenia. So then we had to last minute switch me. And so Fan is doing the episode on September 4th instead. So Fan was supposed to do Wednesday. But now I'm taking her spot in that one. Anyway, okay. Let's get back to what we were talking about, which is John Krasinski being a SCAB. And then we're going to get into John Krasinski as CIA John Krasinski. Going from America's favorite boyfriend to the CIA's favorite actor. The mesh on that hoodie is fire. Sorry for the totally random comment. I was going to burst if I didn't let it out. Well, I'm glad you let it out so you didn't burst. Okay, so Krasinski has not responded. What I was saying was, even if he had no idea, he's innocent in this, which I have a hard time believing, he needs to come out and right the wrongs. He needs to be like, I am sorry. I stand with the members of ACTRA. Like, use his celebrity, use his platform for good. Bring attention to this now over 2-year labor dispute where union Canadian actors are getting fucked. He won't. I don't think he will either, but I'm just saying that's the right thing to do. The ICA says that if it were to agree to the deal that the union wants, advertisers would simply work with agencies using non-union talent instead. Fuck off. Fuck out of here. Oh, there's nothing we can do because our hands are tied. These advertisers will just work with agencies who are using non-union talent. They say the same thing with every labor strike. They're like, nothing we can do. They shared their September 2023 proposal for a new agreement. ACTRA has responded saying it's disappointed with proposed concessions. The ICA also contests ACTRA's description of the dispute as a lockout, saying that ACTRA has instructed its members not to work for signatory agencies, but that agencies have never prevented ACTRA members from auditioning for productions. Gordey, the ACTRA vice president, says that's just not true. It's before the Ontario Labour Board right now, he said, suggesting that the OLRB would have to rule on whether or not the NCA is a collective agreement. Nonetheless, he said, remember not to touch my microphone. Nonetheless, he said it's an agreement that's been in place for over 60 years. ICA President Not Cox declined an interview citing the ongoing process at the OLRB. Okay, let's watch this video on how hard it is being an actor in Hollywood with Broe Deschanel.
When you think of Canadian actors, who comes to mind? Is it Ryan Gosling, Jim Carrey, Sandra Oh, Mike Myers, Rachel McAdams, Seth Rogen? You probably think,
you know what would be great too? And somebody, if you've seen any of these big Canadian actors, has Drake said anything? If any big Canadian actors said something, please link it. I haven't found anything in my research, but what would be great is if these big Canadian actors who, you know, live in America because they built their careers in Hollywood, if they came out and used their platforms to support the union Canadian actors.
those guys are pretty famous. Well, yeah, they are. But the thing is, most of them don't work in Canada, and haven't for a long time. Why is that? Well, it's tough being an actor in Canada. It's hard to find work here. It's hard to get recognition. If you've been following this series, you'll know by now that Canada has made itself a very hospitable environment to American productions to film their movies here. And while you would think this would be good for our actors, more movies, more chances of getting a part, it's not all roses and sunshine. I spoke to my friend Ellie, who's been working professionally as an actor since she was 8 and made appearances in shows like Murdoch Mysteries
Justin
and
Bieber,
The
your
Comey
silence is
Rule. This is
deafening.
what she had to say about it.
I think there's a perception among Canadian actors that there is sort of a ceiling in terms of how far you can go in your career in Canada. American productions come up and they've already cast the leading roles with American stars, but in order to shoot in Canada, they get a tax credit for having a quota of Canadian talent. So what ends up happening is a lot of the supporting and guest roles, sometimes if you're lucky, background gets filled out with Canadian talent. And you're more likely to get a leading role in a Canadian production, but you do sort of feel like it's a bit of an uphill battle. There's sort of this sense of like, will I actually ever have like a fulfilling and full creative journey as an artist in this country? And then it also creates like an atmosphere and a hierarchy on set. A lot of Canadian actors just anecdotally find that they're sort of treated as like second rate.
But things aren't so great for American productions at the moment. I'm sure by now you're familiar with the strikes happening in Hollywood. One of the groups striking is SAG-AFTRA, the American Actors Union, who are fighting against a set of proposals that will threaten working conditions for actors, really all over North America.
Yeah, obviously this video took place during the SAG-AFTRA strikes last year, but a reminder that the video game performers are still on strike.
I spoke to Ellie again months later after the strikes were underway,
Novalox,
and
thank
this
you
is
for
what
the
she had to
24
say.
months.
Well,
Microwave
I think
cereal,
the
thank you for the
issues
prime.
that they're battling right now in the States are ours. We could also easily be striking as well. Those issues are not separate from us. It just is happening on a larger scale there, and there's more money at stake.
On top of the ripple effect that actors in Canada are facing from these strikes, financial precarity is unfortunately a struggle they know all too well, and things recently got tougher. Canada has its own English language actors union. It's called ACTRA, or the Alliance of Canadian Cinema, Television, and Radio Artists. They've been around for about 80 years, and they play an important role in protecting the welfare of performers in Canada. On top of that, their mission is to advocate, quote, for our industry and more generally, for Canadian culture. So ACTRA, like SAG-AFTRA, is by and large a positive force in our industry, and right now, it's also facing some struggles. We're gonna do a bit of an alphabet game for a sec. Basically, there's this thing called the National Commercial Agreement, or NCA, which is an agreement between ACTRA, the Institute of Canadian Agencies, or the ICA, and the Association of Canadian Advertisers, or the ACA. Every few years, ACTRA and the ICA and the ACA negotiate the terms of their agreement. But this time around, there's been a rift. There's a whole lot of he said, she said going on here, but basically, the ICA is arguing that there's this 2008 clause in the agreement which makes it so that US agencies signed with the ICA must use union talent in their commercials. And since 2008, says the ICA, older ad agencies who signed the agreement are mad because they have to abide by higher labor costs and pay their talent appropriately.
Oh, God
when
forbid.
newer agencies who didn't sign the agreement can save a bunch of money by using both union and non-union talent, and that they're accessing the union talent through third-party companies so that they don't have to sign the NCA. This has led to a dynamic that the CEO of the ICA, Scott Knox, calls an unlevel playing field. And because of this, the ICA, the advertising people, decided not to renew the agreement last year. But ACTRA says that the ICA just walked away from the bargaining table without a discussion, and that this is essentially just a form of union busting, or an attempt to make the conditions harder for actors in the workplace. Since the dispute started over a year ago, union talent from ACTRA claim they've now been frozen out of working with the ICA's super long list of major international clients. In other words, Canadian union actors aren't getting commercial work, and that is not good.
I've always felt well advocated for with ACTRA. There were a lot of protections in place for child actors. So commercials are awesome because if you book one, you can make a ton of money in a really short amount of time. Many actors will book one single commercial in a year, and that will cover them in terms of their expenses for most, if not the whole year. And then they're able to do all these other creative pursuits outside of that. However,
the U.S. commercial industry has been affected. It used to be that big name stars would never do commercials. Just like silver screen stars would never do television. They considered it beneath them. They were like, this is not acting work. This is not acting work we do. But then there was this change where now most major commercials you watch have a star attached to them. Think of every, credit card commercial, insurance, the Jakes from State Farm, the Flo from Progressives, the Can You Hear Me Now Verizon guy who then became the T-Mobile guy. That used to be more commonplace, but commercials have been taken over now by stars who make a ton of money on them. And what happens every time you have, when you have big A-list talent move into part of the industry is that it knocks everybody down. So commercials don't pay what they used to for commercial actors. And there's also less opportunities to book big national commercials because they are now they go to stars. They are chock full of A-list Hollywood talent.
However, I see that the change in the commercial agreement, what is worrying about it could potentially set this new precedent that could affect film and TV work in Canada. So the issue here is that if streaming services, for example, catch wind that they can pretty easily blow past ACTRA and just start casting non-union actors, they will do that, and then we'll see a big loss in terms of film and TV opportunities.
And months later, she's finding things haven't gotten much better.
What I'm seeing is a lot of friends and colleagues turning to working more fully in side jobs or just looking for completely alternative career paths because it's so unknown how things are going to progress and if the industry is going to be equipped to support our lives.
And this situation really is the straw that broke the camel's back.
What I'm concerned about is an artistic drain on the industry, especially in Canada, which would be very, very sad. There's so much Canadian talent.
In Amanda Cole's article about why our film tax credit system actually harms Canadians, which I talked about in the last episode, she finds that employment contracts for foreign film are all over the place in terms of how long they can last. Sometimes it'll be up to 8 months for key cast or crew members, but for background or day player actors and certain crew members, time on set can be as little as a day. This means that background actors, most of whom are Canadian, go really long periods without work. She also finds that Hollywood's tendency these days to be pretty penny pinching has spawned all these low-budget, non-union productions, which have become known as the Walmart model of film and television. This means that juicier work opportunities for unionized professionals, including actors, are decreasing, while people are now competing more and more to work on low-paying productions. But Ellie's hopeful.
Another way that that could be approached is that ACTRA drops a lot of the requirements just so more and more people join the union and there's just like fewer non-union performers to choose from. I think it's important to be informed about those policy changes. If you have a big role in a Canadian feature, maybe you don't get a lot of like international recognition, but within the community, people are gonna like take notice. I'm interested in like what a Canadian...
It might be something where non-union actors, though, if they, if they are getting a vibe check on things, would choose to not join ACTRA because there's more opportunities for them.
Artistic
Is it hard to join the acting union? I don't know what the specifications for ACTRA are, but for SAG-AFTRA, there's a couple different ways that you become union eligible. But typically, you have to book work that is you have to book union work. So I always give like my example where basically I had booked one small TV role and then I booked another one, and after the second one I think I became eligible, but I didn't have to join. And then on my third one I was informed that I needed to join the union and able to be able to do the role. So it's not everyone's path is the same, and it's not that it's like impossible to join the union, but it is something where it can take some time because it's hard to get those, it's hard to get auditions unless you have representation, and then it's hard to book those roles just because everything's very competitive.
Identity is.
And that's really what we're all hoping for, isn't it? A Canadian industry that's interested in cultivating a strong, diverse, and lucrative Canadian identity.
We really need to support artists in order to have Canadian culture. What are we without storytelling and
without
the
Canada.
arts and tradition and culture?
I think as we stand in solidarity with the actors striking in the US, it's important as Canadians to support our actors here as well, and keep in mind that they've been facing their own set of hurdles for a long time now.
Being an artist generally is like a bit of an embattled vocation right now. I think being a Canadian actor means that you're going to spend your whole life basically wondering if you should be trying out this career somewhere else. And that's a hard thing to live with. In the last year, as there's been this upheaval, I've been doing a lot more theater. I'm really happy that those opportunities are available in Toronto, but I found my year has been dominated by theater. I did one film job in January. I also really miss on-screen work, and I really, once I finish this next theater contract, I'm really excited to get back into film. I really hope there are opportunities available when I come back to it.
Yeah, so
Dance as if no.
So it's fuck John Krasinski, okay? And now we're gonna get into let's see. I miss Michael Brooks. Here's a video to feel better about Krasinski. Yeah. Fuck you, Jim Halpert.
Let me set this up a little bit. So This is a piece that isn't even a negative piece. There's a lot of scholarship on this, actually. It was really big in the aughts. But Matthew Alford.
So let me just give you a little overview on John Krasinski's career. So John Krasinski blew up because he was Jim from The Office. Like most people, when they think of John Krasinski, they'll always think of Jim Halpert. That's what I keep saying, by America's boyfriend, Jim Halpert, who people fell in love with because he was snarky and he was cute. And then, you know, he was like a family guy. Anyway, so John Krasinski, who was, you know, he was cute, he was disheveled, but he was like very nerdy looking. Well, John Krasinski in 2012, is that when 13 Hours came out? Let's see. 2016, sorry. John Krasinski in 2016 suddenly steps out and he's fucking jacked. He's ripped, he's shirtless. He's not, you know, he's no longer disheveled Jim Halpert from The Office. He's like mega Chad, 8-pack, glistening John Krasinski, who's starring in Michael Bay's 13 Hours. If you know anything about Michael Bay's film 13 Hours, well, it is like dick riding the CIA so goddamn hard. It is propaganda through and through, even though Michael Bay is like, it's not political. You know, they have lines in the movie where they talk about all Libyans hating Americans. It's very much so a CIA approved project. And so that was the beginning of John Krasinski's foray into what we refer, you know, what is called the military entertainment complex, which is the connection between the military and the various organizations, the various federal organizations like the CIA and the FBI, and the entertainment industry. 13 Hours was about Benghazi. Yeah. And it also perpetrated a lot of like the craziest Benghazi conspiracies. It's Michael Bay, right? They made this into like a macho man action film, where John Krasinski played the lead role in that. Anyway, so that was the beginning of John Krasinski embarking on this very pro-military propagandized path. So, you know, he did 13 Hours. He did, oh my God, what I'm blanking on what the film he did before he got to Jack Ryan, before he got to playing Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, which was the most CIA dick riding project of them all. The military isn't run by idiots. They hire film majors too. Yeah, we'll get more into talking about the military entertainment complex. But yeah, from Jim to from saving Jim Halpert to Private Ryan.
Writing for The Independent. This is in September 2017. On television, we have found more than 1,100 titles have received Pentagon backing. 900 of them since 2005. From Flight 93 to Ice Road Truckers and Army Wives. Washington, D.C.'s role behind the scenes in Hollywood goes deeper than you think. The U.S. government and Hollywood have always been close. Washington, D.C. has been a source of intriguing plots for filmmakers, and L.A. has been a generous provider of glamour and glitz to the political class.
I knew it.
It is a matter of public record that the Pentagon has an entertainment liaison office since 1948.
Okay, so let's talk about this real quickly, because this is not a conspiracy theory. This is like well established. So back in World War II, during World War II is when the United States sought to use entertainment as a form of propaganda. And Elmer Davis, who was the head of the United States Office of War Information, which was created during World War II, he said The easiest way to inject a propaganda idea into most people's minds is to let it go through the medium of an entertainment picture that they do not realize they're being propagandized. So essentially, Americans love entertainment, and the best way for us to propagandize them is through entertainment where they won't realize what they're being propagandized to. They're just consuming the entertainment, not understanding the the psychology at play here, where, if we, for instance, the show 24 Hours, famous show 24 Hours with Jack Bauer starring Kiefer Sutherland playing Jack Bauer. This was a show during the George Bush administration. And it was a show that did so much propagandizing. For example, the use of torture. Okay, Jack Bauer was torturing everybody. Every brown person in 24 was a terrorist. And we know that what that show did, the effect that 24 had on viewers being more likely to support the government's policies of torture. This has been demonstrated through research that a show like 24 with torturer Jack Bauer made people who watched that show, which a shit ton of people watched that show, yours included. I watched that show. I was obsessed with that show. And I thought that everything Jack Bauer did was totally above board, and I was for it. Granted, I was in 7th grade. But anyway, it meant that when stories of torture at Guantanamo Bay would come out, Americans who watched stuff like 24 would have been propagandized to believe that everything was good, that it's good that the U.S. was doing torture. Guantanamo Bay. Realizing everything that you've ever loved is a psyop. Yeah, well, when it has to do, especially with anything connected to the military, it absolutely is. So this goes all the way back to World War II, when the government realized how vital the entertainment industry is to push through their propaganda. And, a memo was circulated. A memo was circulated that said that one of the most powerful propaganda weapons at the disposal of the United States is cinema. And it makes sense, right? You think about it, and that's not something intellectually complicated. Okay, that makes total sense. Cinema, baby. Presidents since then have taken part in the military entertainment complex. Dwight Eisenhower in the 50s, in talking about how the government's hand must be carefully concealed and in some cases wholly eliminated, and how this can be done through the fields of entertainment, music, so on and so on. And then after 9/11, never forget 9/11, there was an even greater increase in collaboration between the U.S. government and Hollywood. In the weeks after 9/11, Karl Rove and a number of senior government officials traveled to Hollywood, where they had a bunch of meetings with studio executives who pledged to aid the U.S. government's efforts in fighting the war on terror. So that is why after 9/11, we got so much fighting terrorists, evil brown people, war on terror propaganda. And that is because of the military entertainment complex, which is deeply, deeply entrenched. So that's what he's talking about here.
The Central Intelligence Agency established a similar position in 1996. And it goes on, and we'll talk more about this on the show, to just talk about everything from script advising to logistical support to expert support, all of this stuff that skews and makes, either prestige vehicles like Zero Dark 30 that made it look like torture discovered bin Laden, and glossed over all of the U.S. atrocities in the quote-unquote war on terrorism, or even a movie like Argo, which I actually like, but, you know, tells an incredibly narrow pro-CIA.
Just know, if any film that you're watching is using any military services, okay, so military equipment, filming on location, anything like that, that film has had to go through the Department of Defense's Entertainment Media Unit, and it's a whole office, and it's been thoroughly vetted, and not just vetted. The DoD's entertainment media unit is involved in the production from start to finish. So if there's something that they don't like, if they think that it shows the U.S. in a bad light, if they think that it's a little bit too anti-military, they're going to get it removed. And this has had an enormous effect on, you know, what films are made, what films get access to any military resources. And in the 40s, from 42 to 45, so this was during World War II, the OWI, which was the precursor to the CIA, the OWI's Bureau of Motion Pictures reviewed over 1,650 scripts. That is a lot of scripts. And they discarded or they revised any scripts that showed the U.S. in a bad light. And not even just in a bad light. In a light that was not thoroughly positive and would work towards the military's goal of, or the government's goal of, U.S. citizens viewing the military in an unequivocally positive way. Sea Sky Duck, thank you for the tier 1. Krobin, thank you for the 15 months. Frick, thank you for the 6 months.
Perspective through this one fun, interesting adventure story. And
I never saw it, but did you watch 24?
When Michael passed, I had recently canceled my Patreon for TMBS because I was tight on money. And the next time I logged in, I had a message for him asking if I wanted my membership comp for a bit. He knew stuff was hard for people. I miss him so much. I mean, this was the guy who was on food stamps. You know, that's how he grew up. He was such an empathetic person. And a lot of that was because of his own upbringing, and it's why he fought so hard for progress. Oh my God, Michael Brooks is so missed. I know, he's so missed. Now villains are becoming Russian again, like the good old days. Oh yeah.
Oh, the TV show?
Yeah, because one of my friends told me every episode of 24 was just Keith or Sutherland like finding a Middle Eastern kid and hooking a car battery up to him, and
basically.
Yeah.
And what was perfect though is that 24 and Homeland are the same show. Mm-hmm. They just reflect the different. Like 24 is just like
it all starts out with like every episode starts out like exactly. They're trying to like scare you.
No, 24 is like, all right, you know what? Fine, we got to put a car battery on this kid's nuts. And Homeland was the Obama era, so it's just like, I studied anthropology at Swarthmore, so I feel bad about liquidating this Palestinian village, but
but both Homeland and 24 had the eyes of the DoD's Entertainment Bureau like on them, and the bureau was a part of both of those productions.
Being into the abyss of evil.
Yeah.
So the point is that the CIA and the Pentagon, and even like Thaddeus Russell made this point to me once, actually, like how, even if you watch like sometimes 80s or 90s movies, it might be like, oh, the bad guy's some general or something. And now like almost always, even in like the comic book movies, the military is valorized. Which is all to say, this ad for this new Amazon series is next level with Jim from The Office and Bunk from The Wire. This is so bad that like they at least deserve a few unpleasant tweets for this, I would say.
The good thing about Jack Ryan The good thing about this show is that it's so obviously propaganda that a lot of people called it out. Like, I think older films, audiences were not as aware of the military propaganda. But with something like Jack Ryan, people watching it were like, okay, this is such fan fiction. This is regime change fantasy, especially the second season where it's all about Venezuela and how, anybody who knows anything about, the CIA's interventionism in Latin America and just the history of how the CIA has been behind so many coups and installing right-wing dictators. Like, watching season 2 of Jack Ryan, a lot of people were like, okay, come the fuck on. And then John Krasinski's comments about the CIA and how much he loves the CIA and how much what John said is that everyone should be thanking the CIA every single day. All he does is talk positively about the CIA. He worked very closely with the CIA on Jack Ryan. And it's like, yeah, dude, we know. Even if you haven't watched the show, if you've watched the trailer for Jack Ryan, or if you've watched a clip, it's like, yeah, John Krasinski, we know you dick ride for the CIA. And then John Krasinski was like, yeah, my family, I have a lot of family members in the military. It's like, yeah, we know, dude. We can see. We can see with the work that you're doing, while also trying to maintain that, like, he's not political. It's so weird. John, you can't have it both ways, okay? You can't be part of the military entertainment complex and then also, like, try and pretend that you're not political.
Check this ad out.
Major threat on the world stage. Venezuela is the single greatest resource of oil on the planet. So why is this country in the midst of one of the greatest humanitarian crises in history?
I wonder.
I can't watch this. It's so embarrassing.
Your concern is that the Russians are secretly selling weapons to Venezuela?
It would fit a pattern.
Olivia,
Pattern.
Olivia, thank you for the 12 months. It would fit a pattern.
This ends up in the news.
Pause it.
It's just going to cause panic.
By the way, this Crosby, Stills, Nash song is actually a great song, and it's been overused in a million, like, all right, we're having a hippie montage, let's play that song again. They're doing a cover of it to promote war on Venezuela. I just want that to sink.
I think it's Buffalo Springfield, and the only reason I'm correcting you is because I'm doing it before the people on the internet.
I thought it was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Am I wrong? I don't know. Who cares? Whatever.
Yeah.
Look. Don't
no,
bring.
I just don't want
do
the
not
trolls
bring
coming
your
after
boomer
you.
shit to me.
Yeah.
The point is, it's an honorable hippie song, and it's supposed to be in a montage of people putting flowers in each other's hair, not promoting invasion of Venezuela with a disgusting, hacky remake of the Cuban Missile Crisis. All right.
Cap Nice, thank you for the
This ends up in the news. It's just going to cause panic.
In nuclear Venezuela, you will not hear about in the news because we'll already be dead.
Business a pleasure.
If that actually happened, the first conversation any of these people would be having is, how do we get this into the news?
Yes. Right. No one could actually believe that. Literally. Yeah. Well, although, how do we get this in? The one thing I will give them: how do we get this in the news in a way that completely overlooks the gargantuan intelligence failure that allowed Russia to deposit warheads secretly in our hemisphere of our prime imperial domination? Okay, sure.
Business a pleasure, Jack.
I'm here for work.
Ew.
bro went from Jim in the office to this shit. He could have maintained his innocence, plausible deniability by saying, I always want to be an action hero. I don't know about complex topics of geopolitics. Yeah, if he hadn't gone around talking so much about how he loves the CIA. Like, every word out of his mouth was, the CIA is the best. The coolest thing, like, this is an actual quote. The coolest thing ever for me, I mean, I totally nerded out when we got to the CIA. They were the most unbelievably generous, kind, smart people. The CIA is something that we should all not only cherish, but be saying thank you every single day. He has tried to make the CIA, he literally said the CIA is apolitical. He was like, yeah, what's so great is that the CIA, they're just regular people. You know, the CIA is apolitical. I'm like, I'm sorry, are we talking about the same CIA? We're talking about the CIA? And you're saying that they're apolitical? But see, this is the John Krasinski mindset, right? He will do pro-CIA, pro-military propaganda, while simultaneously being like, yeah, it's not political. It's just the truth. It's just an action movie. It's just an action show. Where we've totally rewritten the history in Venezuela, and the dictator in Venezuela is right-wing, and the U.S. in season 2 of Jack Ryan is trying to install a left-wing girl boss, which is not what happened at all. This is regime change fantasy. And the CIA, working with somebody like John Krasinski on a show like Jack Ryan, has their hands all over it. They get to mold it into whatever they want it to be. Isn't Will a CIA agent? I can't comment on that. I can't remark on that. I might disappear.
Oh.
Yeah, the U.S. No, it doesn't get into any of that. It doesn't contextualize why Venezuela was in such dire conditions. Why the economy had collapsed. They don't give any context to that. They don't talk about sanctions. They don't talk about any of that shit.
Jim from the opposite sucks.
What happened? Reyes, look at me. Was his name ever mentioned?
You guys stay. You have no protection. Nobody's coming to save us.
We do this together. I can live with that.
Well, the Bolivarian government looks super effective. Wow.
What's happening that though? Russia's selling weapons to Venezuela
Secretly.
so Venezuela can nuke us?
Secret weapons.
I just realized that because I've seen that trailer a bunch of times. Yeah.
I love how they can't even give you this is a deterrence that will keep.
Was this man ever in the military, or does he just desperately wish he was? He has a bunch of family members in the military. But I think what happened with John, and let me actually pull up this BuzzFeed profile on him. So, okay, this was like the new John Krasinski when he stepped out with this body, with the announcement that he's starring in 13 Hours, and I was like, whoa, what happened? And I think John really wanted to become an action hero, and he talks about the fact that he was considered to play Captain America, which then eventually went to Chris Evans. This is a guy who wants to be the face of American heroism, okay? Captain America being a dream role for him, literally the Captain of America. Okay, so Cubicle drone Jim Halpert has remade himself as an action hero, and a particular kind. A reluctant but stalwart defender of an American way of life. Yeah, important to note that in all these roles, he's the good guy, right? At the end of the day, this guy is a hero. 13 Hours may have been the work of Bay, that auteur of explosions, bombast, and robot alien franchises, but it wasn't just another shoot 'em up. 13 Hours was a movie about a 2012 tragedy that became a persistent right-wing rallying point and a renewed source of contention as Hillary Clinton ran for office in 2016 when the movie came out. While Bay insisted that the film had no political agenda and that its timing, a January release during the presidential race, was not strategic, plenty of people on both sides of the aisle read it differently. 13 Hours tried to stake out middle ground between respectful cinema about real American losses and swaggering spectacle from the man responsible for Armageddon. The weirdness to watch Krasinski in the midst of it had nothing to do with his new look. It came from the cognitive dissonance of seeing an actor whose on-screen persona had previously run so heavily towards the funny, snarky, sensitive, now surrounded by machismo, brandishing an assault rifle, muttering about government incompetence, and barking frustration at CIA agents who are portrayed as arrogant, sniveling Ivy League snobs. Its status as a crypto-conservative attempt at a blockbuster aside, 13 Hours was a major hit for Krasinski, who'd been actively trying to break through to the ranks of big screen stardom. And while the movie sank at the box office, it gave him the opportunity to flex some different muscles, both literally and in terms of performance, to the point where it seems to have signaled a more permanent turning point in his career. Traces of a similarly tough, taciturn patriarch who would kill and die for his treasured nuclear family are all over his film A Quiet Place, which he directed as well as starred in. And it was his showing as Jack Silva that convinced the powers that be at Amazon that he could play Jack Ryan in their drama, which operates as a kind of prequel to the many film adaptations that Clancy's series has already received. The show's North American premiere... Okay, blah, blah, blah. Any sense that Krasinski will publicly yell at an empty chair in the next 50 years, as The Ringer's Allison Herman predicted, doesn't stem directly from his personal life. While he's kept his leanings to himself, his wife, Emily Blunt, has spoken out about Trump before. He's good pals with Aaron Sorkin and with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, with whom he co-hosted a fundraiser for Elizabeth Warren in 2012. For instance, when the actor who comes from a military family told the Daily Beast about how bothered he was that 13 Hours was being seen as political. The truth is, we should all be proud of these guys, and the moment you politicize it, the more you're moving us towards a world that I don't want to be living in, a world where people want to score political points at all costs. Brother! You are CIA John Krasinski. Do people still get the empty chair reference? The empty chair reference, it's Clint Eastwood yelling at an empty chair. The fucking full title of the movie was 13 Hours, The Secret Story of Benghazi. It's pretty fucking political. It is insane for him to be like, I can't believe people are politicizing this film. This is not a world that I want to live in. Holy shit. Krasinski has sidestepped readings of A Quiet Place as a metaphor for the country's political turmoil, telling The Hollywood Reporter, that's not what I was going for, but the best compliment you can get on any movie is that it starts a conversation. While preparing for Jack Ryan, which starts with his character working as a mid-level CIA analyst, Krasinski shared some similar-sounding observations with Entertainment Weekly regarding getting to go to the actual agency. And then I already read this quote of his. Oh, wait, no, not this part. I was blown away by a lot of things with the CIA, how incredibly diverse the place was, and how apolitical. This might go down as one of the craziest, dumbest things I've ever heard. I don't know if John Krasinski is so stupid that he would say the CIA is apolitical, or if he really is just a CIA psyop where he's out here trying to be like, no, the CIA is not political at all. I don't know. And then here's the rest of the quote. There was no politics being discussed. It was about objectives of protecting people and getting to the truth of the matter, which I thought was really interesting. Okay, so John's understanding is that something is only political if explicitly politics are being talked about. If you're like talking about, you know, the presidential election, then that's political. But an organization that has like a century's worth of meddling in foreign affairs, of, doing coups, of destabilizing various regions around the world, of, committing assassination. Like that is not political at all. My God. On one hand, you can't blame the actor for wanting to avoid quotes that could possibly be lifted out, aggregated, and result in him dealing with a news cycle and now standard round of anger and apologies. On the other, presenting the CIA or a movie about Benghazi as somehow existing separately from politics is either a willfully oblivious or astonishingly convenient way to see the world. Exactly what I was saying. It was like, he's either the dumbest motherfucker or he is, he's out here like working on behalf of the CIA. He knows exactly who they are. Political to him is like when a hog thinks having a woman or a non-white person be the main character of your movie makes the movie political. The CIA is apolitical because Krasinski likes the CIA. If he doesn't like something, then it's political. Yeah, I think because John Krasinski went to the CIA and maybe they had a conversation about like, oh, how are your kids? And then they showed him a picture of their kids and he's like, great, the CIA is apolitical. They're just regular people. Some more news, old vid on John Krasinski's shitty news show on COVID. Okay, I don't have, I didn't know he had a shitty news show. All right, I have a couple things we got to get to with this. Did not know he had a news show. Maybe we can get to watching a little bit of that. Okay, Krasinski's too smart to believe that things are only political when actual politicians are invoked, which was one of the defenses of 13 Hours, that it couldn't be political because Hillary Clinton wasn't even mentioned by name. It's more likely that he's simply opting out of engaging with the optics of the choices that he's making because he doesn't feel like he has to acknowledge them. It's awfully advantageous to not see politics, even when, say, starring in a story about one of the most divisive and politicized events in recent history. It's a selective sight that allows him to be adjacent to potentially inflammatory choices while ankling any responsibility to address them himself. He can let his 13 Hours cast members handle the lines about how the Libyans around them are all bad guys until they're not, and putting the fear of God and the United States in them, while his chapter focuses on missing his family. He can put a pregnancy at the center of his allegory about parental worry, A Quiet Place, and not have any of the characters even acknowledge that this planned, unplanned addition is going to imperil them all. He can drift past torture and human trafficking in Jack Ryan, because while he may make use of the info his colleagues generate to pursue his target, he doesn't participate in these acts himself. Favorite Jack Ryan tidbit: they dropped the T-slur for absolutely no reason other than shock value in season 1 in 2018. Awesome. Great show. All right, let's go and finish this.
The dictatorship in place. It's like literally a government. Like, there's enough lies and exaggeration about this government.
Also, if you don't know this, Tom Clancy, who also is the author of The Hunt for Red October, he is so, like, he was always like very, very right wing. And he, like, for the adaptations of his books, he would volunteer and be like, no, here, like, I want to go to the Department of Defense and the Pentagon and make sure that, like, they approve of all this. He was the biggest dick writer. Massive Reagan fan too. Oh yeah, massive Reagan fan. And he sold millions of copies of his books during the Reagan era for people who, like, were nostalgic for the Cold War era when the United States government was cracking down on communists. So, in the 80s, when we were no longer, the Cold War era, it's something that, yeah, it ended, but the threat of communism and the way that we talk about communism has never gone away. But he sold a bunch of books during Reagan's era because of that nostalgia for, that good old McCarthyism.
To begin with, but then it's like, no,
about the
Maduro government wants to nuke New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, they have no imagination. This is literally like 2003 propaganda.
Yeah, after Maduro has a
He
steak.
wrote quintessential dad blogs.
Yeah, Maduro's like, yeah, exactly. I want to tour a soccer field, have an empanada, and yeah, I want to nuke New York and DC. Even radiologically, that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Is there something comforting about how bad a propaganda that is, though?
Yeah, maybe.
No,
I don't know.
It's just so embarrassing, though.
I
don't think you need to be that sophisticated to see that that's embarrassing.
I had a number of people. I tweeted out when this happened. I said, "Fuck John Krasinski."
Right.
And I had people being like, "Why don't you wait for the show?" Like people that follow me.
Block.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't.
Clancy spent the last few years of his life bitterly fighting with the Four Seasons in Baltimore to build a gun range in his unit. Yeah. I love this idea of why don't you wait for the show? You're like, this is Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. I don't think we need to wait for the show.
To take a, I can't help it. Definitely
But
a
they
Venn.
don't.
People who tweeted, well, you wait till that show. There is a Venn diagram for Elizabeth Warren's just as progressive as Bernie Sanders. That is
2020 me would be like, okay, you've gone too far here. 2020 me would be pissed about this moment here. I'd be like, wait a sec, I was on your side. Hold on.
some insane, naive shit right there.
Like, okay, these guys have gone too far now.
Why don't you see what they do? Maybe there'll be a plot twist.
I mean, the crazy thing, who's the director of this? I forget who it says, but I think I added him too. And the guy was trying to suggest that they didn't write, they're not responsible for the script, and that they're sort of workers. And it's like, if you're on the poster guy, you get the heat.
I love it. I love the new victim.
Also, at the end of every episode was the following disclaimer. The producers wish to express their appreciation to the United States Coast Guard. The Central Intelligence Agency has not approved or endorsed the contents of this production. Yeah, right, girl. Nice try. Nice try. You literally filmed at the CIA's Langley base. The CIA was involved top to bottom.
Mentality. She's like, hey, I'm just doing what Jeff Bezos demanded
so much for solidarity.
Yeah, so much for solidarity.
That's so crazy because I watched that trailer maybe like 10 times, and I just put that together now that that's the threat that Venezuela is going to nuke us. Because I think my subconscious mind was like, surely they wouldn't. That's not the show.
Surely it couldn't possibly be that stupid.
Yeah.
It's like we're in the middle of a domestic crisis, and let's just go for an all-out war with the United States military.
So in that show, the Maduro government's going to nuke the U.S.?
Yes, apparently from the ad. I guess they go from like, all right. Let's when we're done with the new provisional peacekeeping agreement in Geneva or in Uruguay or wherever they're holding these new talks, and we've given out some ministries, and we've had Guaido's people stop working with Colombian cartels to destabilize the country. Let's open up a new Chavez mural to the Bolivarian Revolution, and then shoot some new Russian nukes on every main city in the United States.
I like the Russia element to this too. Like, what's Russia thinking? Like, we want to nuke America, but if we do it, they'll shoot it back at us.
Right, I like that. It's just like,
they're
if
closer.
we give it that way, then they will never tell. I like how it's like actually a genuine like global security threat that like the United States even selling like high lethality weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right. Or even in fact like the minimal support that Russia does provide for Venezuela. Those are like super touchy because they're both their respective imperial zones of influence. And it's just like the new Russian strategy.
Where are the fucking nukes?
You'll never find out. We will give it to our friends, and we will have vodka and empanada and nuke all of you.
Yeah.
Coming from Amazon. All right, let's get to the bad.
And pierogies, yeah.
You know what? I would probably do one that's even worse.